for you, ma'am, is with respect to the MOU with Myanmar and Malawi also for the poor supplies. When do the ma'am?
Yes, please.
I- I'll repeat my question. With respect to the MOUs that have been signed, so when do these get effected? In the sense, will it be immediately after the OGL regime ends on 31st October, or will there be a kind of a period left aside to first take stock of the situation in terms of how much has arrived, and then will the MOU be implemented in terms of the imports of the stock? That's one. Second is, now, for example, if the MOU with Myanmar is for 100,000 tons of crude for this financial year, will that be over and above what has already got imported in this financial year, or will that quantity be reduced from the 100,000 tons and then licenses be issued? How would that implementation happen?
See, I think you must have followed it up with the Commerce Ministry also. We have taken it out from the restriction list. This is basically to say augment the import of pulses in a rather say without say the binding of a quota. The idea being that we would like the availability of pulses uh, to be made available to the consumers in any which way. Now, when we enter into the MOU, it is largely to also indicate other countries, farmers of other countries, because it is naturally, it's not something on the shelf. So people have to be, say, confident that they are now on a long-term, say, plan, and whatever is the harvest there, this is the size of the MOU that this much we will be allowing. Now, since you know that most of the, particularly like pulses like Tur, were facing a lot of, say, difficulty. Even Urad, it was not available in the country. And so the idea is that uh, I mean, in the first instance, we wanted the pulses very, very badly. And that is how it has been taken out of the restricted list. Thereafter, we also want to, for a short term, this will work. For a long term, definitely the standing MOUs with these countries will also help uh, in understanding how much we need, how much we consume, how much, see, ultimately, just as we are distributing, say, rice and wheat under the PDS system, and that has helped save people at least through the pandemic when people lost their jobs. It was difficult. At least people did not die of hunger. We also saw that when we supplied chana through PMGKY, it was a very popular, it was a very popular step, and everyone was very positive, all states put together. Now, can we do it on a sustained basis if we have more pulses? So, we can think in those lines.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, just to understand this a little more clearly, so the final implementation or the modalities of the MOU will come from the Commerce Ministry, right, ma'am?
Yes.
Let me just quickly bring in both Vatsal and Desh here. With the MOUs announced with 1 lakh, 100,000 tons for Tor and 2.5 lakh tons for Urad, have especially with the Myanmar farmers going into sowing now, do you see an immediate impact on an increase in acreage in Myanmar, Vatsal?
See, as far as tuar is concerned, the planting is underway at the moment as we talk. I'm sure it'll give some impetus to the farmers that, you know, India is there to support to some extent. But people who have gone away, who have gone to other crops, I don't think they're going to come back with a quantity of 100,000 tons. People who have stuck with tuar, they have some confidence that at least there is going to be a home for whatever they produce to some extent. The other factor that I understand is that this 100,000 is the minimum. It's not going to be limited to 100,000. So over and above this 100,000, you also have the import licenses that are going to be issued. So the import license is issued for say 400,000 tons. Myanmar will be able to participate in that 400,000 plus get this 100,000, which I think should be good. Yes. If the number is 400,000 on the licenses.
And Desh, Urad will be going into sowing much later in the year. But given the fact that there's a 2.5 lakh ton MOU with Myanmar for Urad, do you expect the sowing to definitely take an upward swing?
So, Pradeep, I will answer it with some data. If you look back, 3-4 years, roughly 6 lakhs tons were exported of black mate. Over a period of time, last year, roughly it touched around 5.5 lakh, close to 5 lakh tons. And, with such kind of announcement, farmers will definitely look, it is a promising, thing for the farmer as well, but it will not come immediately. Farmers over the past years have seen how the policies frequently changed from the other side, from India side. And over a period of time, they have moved to other crops, maybe green moong, soybean, yellow maize, all those things. So it will take some time for them to, understand how the policy is going to, be affected over 3 years, 5 years time frame. But yes, there could be a positive sentiment coming in from the farmer side, but I would not see immediately impact will be there in terms of sowing, because they have also seen the farm economics of the other crop, which is benefiting them, and they have already established some kind of trade flow for those crops in different kind of markets. So positive sentiment will be there, but it will take few years to understand how the policy is, whether it is stable or not. Thank you.
Pradeep, I just want to add to something that I said. You see, today you have MOU for 100,000 and you possibly have an import license of 400. I think Myanmar would rather take it the other way around. That is, you give us an MOU of 400 and then you have an import license of 100, because then you're at least assured of a much larger quantity. I mean, you understand what I'm saying, right? 100,000 is the minimum. If the minimum can be increased, and okay, you reduce the import license quantity, but you hike the minimum MOU quantity, I think that is a much better thing for Myanmar as a country, for the trade.
Ma'am, would it be possible for you to throw some light on what is the current buffer stock holding that the government has, especially with Urad and Moong?
For the stock limit?
No, currently the buffer stock held by, say, NAFED in terms of these three pulses.
No, I don't immediately have the correct figure.
Okay.
But it is large. The largest is about 10 LMT for chana, say 7 for tuar, or 4 for urad, and so on.
Okay. Desh, there's a question for you which came in the Q&As. By what amount has shipping charges increased for pulses transfer from Myanmar to India in terms of per container or tons over a couple of months earlier or a year before? Also, what can be done to amend it on a more favorable side of promoting trade between the two countries?
So, last couple of months, with the constraint in terms of logistics and containers availability, we were seeing, almost $500 per FCL, some time back, which eventually went up to $2,200 per FCL. And gradually we are seeing it is coming down. But, the freights has actually taken away the entire margin or whatever we had at this point of time.
Vatsal, apart from the two vessels that you mentioned were are currently being loaded in Myanmar, in the near future, how many such more breakbulk vessels do you foresee getting loaded for India?
There is one more vessel that has been planned for the month of July, about 8,800 tons or so. And I believe there are 3 smaller vessels loading for Calcutta. Some have loaded, some are to be loaded. These are probably sizes of 2,500 to 3,000 tons. I think everybody is watching as to what the experience on these 3 to 4 vessels is. If the experience is a good one, then this is going to be something of a regular nature, simply because container freights have just run away. This is a much more cost-effective method of getting the pulses across.
Ma'am, before we come towards the end of this, I'd just like to draw your attention. We had the opportunity to meet Secretary Ma'am a couple of days back, and we've actually submitted a representation wherein we've detailed out the kind of impact the stock limits are going to have across the entire value chain, right from the farmer up to the consumer level. And we've made a few requests in that too. We really do hope that due cognizance gets taken on that, and we'll be more than happy to come and meet the Consumer Affairs Ministry once again and have a more detailed discussion on the whole issue, because we do foresee a little bit of a issue coming up in the near future when with the entire thing, because while on one hand we have an OGL, on the other hand stock limit. So we fear kind of a bottleneck happening in terms of the supply. So please do take that into consideration when discussions do happen.
Absolutely. So that is why our approach has been very it's not an open-ended order, and then we've also asked the states to take their own we have made these this order largely to address the ecosystem that prevails in the country, because there are a few states which have the farmers, so producers are there. Then there are other states who have a predominance of milling facility, and then from there how it moves to different parts of the country, and there is predominance of liking about one pulse over the other, or even switching. I mean, in case one pulse is actually very steep, then what is the next pulse that people usually prefer? So we have kept all these things in mind, and that is why it has an exit clause also, that we don't want this to be imposed unnecessarily. But I think we are monitoring it very closely. Every day we are monitoring the prices and how it plays out. Your communication has been also received, and it has highlighted a few things. What was important for us was, during the lockdown, when the entire country, even informally, went into lockdown, in the sense that most of the conspicuous consumption was curtailed in terms of, marriage parties and things like that. Still, the prices were rising, and that was something which was difficult to understand. I mean, we can say that there was definitely a gap between the supply and demand, because this time logistics were not held back. So we cannot say that it was a total lockdown and that's why trucks were not moving or some such thing. Or even if there was, it was only briefly for a very small, time interval that it was imposed between the two states. So I'm sure with the positive steps that we have taken of making it available to the consumers, I think that will help us in understanding how this is moving. And at the same time, the limits that we have imposed, it is for a very brief period. And rest assured, we are monitoring the trends, and we will not want, either to say, uh, as I said, adversely impact the farmers, the choice of sowing, or even the millers and other stakeholders in the chain.
Ma'am, our worry is that with the Kharif sowing just getting underway now, given that there are limitations in terms of what a wholesaler or a trader can hold, we are worried that it could affect the whole sowing intention or the intentions of the farmers. So, what is it that you feel, ma'am? Do you feel that this could affect the sowing intentions, or the government is comfortable that no, it will not? Because even right now, prices are either at the MSP or just below the MSP levels for most pulses except Moong. So even in such a scenario, the whole imposition of stock limits is actually to a level confused also the entire trade as to with
So that's
everything
what
still
I'm saying,
below.
So, during this lockdown, when I said that even conspicuous consumption was not so much into play, it was difficult to say assign one particular reason. What was the reason for this, you know, uh, this gap between the demand and supply? And there was also this notion whether pulses are being hoarded or they are being black, some syndicators working, some such thing. Now, because as I said that we are monitoring the prices daily, we are also monitoring how much imports have arrived, how much, what is the feedback from the states. So we'll be taking into account all that, including, what is the agriculture department's view, how their figures are, getting impacted. So we will not allow that. That's what is the bottom line, that farmers should not suffer, because we understand it's a cyclical nature of the problem. By solving one, we won't want to have another problem.
Ma'am, you mentioned an exit clause. Could you elaborate a little and explain that exit clause that you had mentioned, which is there in the
See, earlier, the imposition of stock limits, if you see, when we imposed it in 2006, it continued for almost a decade. So we don't want that. We just want it for tiding over the problem, and that is why the exit clause, which means that we've said that up to 31st October, this will be there in action. So it also shows that the government is, very open to taking decisions, in the sense that it would require, again a review, whether we have to extend it or whether we have to drop it. So this shows that we will be
ma'am,
on this.
And ma'am, so after this, it is also that the state governments can take an actual call on imposing the limits or not, depending on the ground conditions, or will it be
That
applicable
always
irrespective?
happens. That always happens. When last year we imposed stock limits on onion,
Mhm.
for example, states like Northeast, they did not require. So it all depends. And even
So
we are
state
also,
governments will have the option.
no, I'm saying state governments will have, they will have to give their feedbacks, how it is
Mhm.
how it is impacting them, things like that. So we are open to even receiving their suggestions, how it is working, what is the rollout, Is it helping the cause ultimately? See, it is important to understand that initially we thought that it is the lack of availability of pulses. And when we took the pulses out of restrictive list, we were expecting that, okay, the imports would help us in tiding over this problem. Now, from our own, say, estimates, as I said that, conspicuous consumption has reduced. So even if, it was not available, and even after opening of, say, imports, we expected that there would be some moderation in the prices. The prices had stabilized. A few pulses also showed a little downward trend, but it was still much much more than say last year in the same phase of say season. So that was what was very worrying. That is it, the black marketing or hoarding? What is it? What is it that is checking the pulses from coming into the market?
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Punitji, you had something to say?
Sir, I have a question with Honorable Madam. Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
As MSP prices are increasing every year, ma'am, in last 2 years, as you can see, MSP prices of tuber has been increased from 58 to 63 rupees. Ma'am, in tandem, the finished product prices also increases by 7 rupees. If you increase MSP prices by 5, then finished product prices increases by 7. Ma'am, how do government see these prices? Ma'am, in 2 years, prices of wholesale market has been increased by 7 rupees. Does government see this as an inflation, or how does government see this?
Although I'm not the correct person to answer this because MSPs are fixed by another department, but I see your point that ultimately MSPs also drive into what is actually happening. But I mean, if we see only from the price behavior of the pulses, we will have to do something about what's happening in our sector because one, it is not perishable. I mean, you can have a better shelf life. It is also that it is used for other, say, at least chana. We can say that it is used in other things also. But there is definitely a concern at the highest level that we have to reduce the inflation, both the food inflation as well as the inflationary trends. And it is only with this concern that prices should not go, haywire. The rising trend was simply eating into everyone's. It was difficult to kind of say wish it away. And because there were no harvest in sign, we had to take some decisions.